Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Fantasy Football Hidden Gems of Week 11. So, for those of you who aren't aware, for Week 11 of the Fantasy Football season, I scoured the earth in search of these powerful hidden gems in order to complete my already deadly fantasy lineups. Now, for those of you who are familiar, you'll know the Fantasy Gauntlet that I possess holds major power when it comes to scoring fantasy points. So as I gather these hidden gems, I'm that much more powerful by Sunday to score and win my fantasy games. So what am I going to be going over today? I'm going to be talking about where I found these 6 hidden gems and how you can go pick them up, add them to your lineups to pick up some wins this week as we enter nearly, the fantasy playoffs where many of us need clutch wins in the not too distant future. So that's what we're going to go over. And for those of you who have already subscribed, thank you very much. I appreciate it. But for those of you who haven't, click that subscribe button for more content on the daily from this channel. So anyway, thank you for that. And let's go ahead and let's get right into it, shall we? Hey, everybody. How's it going? All right. So here's the deal. This is what we're going over. Should all be well. We are going over the Power Stone. I'm pretty much going back to the well. I'm going back to an area in which we kind of mentioned last week. We talked about Theo Riddick for a good amount of time because I knew Theo Riddick was going to be a relevant part of the Detroit Lions offense, and that's exactly what he was this past week. Theo Riddick came out, had 7 targets, 6 receptions for 60 receiving yards, and in all things considered, in a PPR that I highly suggested those of you who played in PPR should use him, that's 12 fantasy points right off the gate, right off the bat. And that's something that in a flex position, when you're dealing with 6 teams on bye week in this specific kind of a week, it's a player that you can go pick up, add to your roster, and have pretty good success with them because of the fact that there isn't many receiving options with this Detroit Lions team. We know we've mentioned in the past that Detroit, they've come out, they got rid of Golden Tate, which was a guy that caught 90 balls for them per season. And then this past week, Marvin Jones sustained a knee injury in which he probably won't be playing this coming week. So where does that leave the receiving options of the Detroit Lions? As of right now, I see it within the eyes of Theo Riddick, Kerryon Johnson, and Kenny Galladay. Those are the 3 main receiving options, and that pretty much brings Theo Riddick up the totem pole that much, more. And in my opinion, yes, he's been moved around the formation, but this past week against the Bears, he was used out of the backfield at a substantial amount. Having played 59% of the offensive snaps, which was just about 5% more from the week prior, Theo Riddick is more and more being often used in these formations, sometimes in a 2-back set. It just depends, but Theo Riddick is being featured within this offense. He will continue to get targets, and I think because of the extra injury to Marvin Jones, I'm telling you, he's going to get more targets coming his way. And you never know. It's fantasy football. All of these guys that I'm going to mention, they have the upside of a touchdown. So if Theo Riddick comes out, gets his 6 catches for 60 yards, which I expect him to do, on top of that catches a touchdown, boom, you have 18 fantasy points in a full point PPR. And a half point PPR, you're sitting there with about, 15? In a standard, I wouldn't suggest it because if he doesn't get that upside of a touchdown, you're likely going to sit around with about 6 points. But anyway, Theo Riddick, we went back to the well because I have supreme confidence in him this coming week in the matchup against the Carolina Panthers. I think the Panthers defense, yes, they've been stout, but it doesn't matter when Theo Riddick is going to be dicing them up in the route game, running them routes all around the field. I have a lot of confidence in him this week. That is why he is my Power Stone. There it is. I've brought it out, the Fantasy Gauntlet here. And that's Theo Riddick. So let's go ahead and move on to the next hidden gem for this coming week. So for the Space Stone, I traveled to good old Dallas in order to acquire Dak Prescott as this week's Space Stone. Now, why did why was the hidden gem of the Space Stone in the form of Dak Prescott this week? Well, I'll tell you. The past 4 weeks, Dak Prescott has been considerably better when it comes to fantasy. He's been putting up more and more points comparatively to what he was doing in the beginning of the season. Now it's come to a point where, we do have 6 teams on bye. Many of us are struggling to find a quarterback, especially in those leagues where we have our constituents that go and pick up 2 quarterbacks and have Breeze and Kirk Cousins on their team in a 1 QB league, and we're sitting there thinking, okay, well, they've basically taken away the option of going to the waiver wire and picking up a guy that I can, supremely count on. But as of right now, I think there is a good option in Dak Prescott this coming week. As I mentioned, in the past 4 weeks, he's been really good. Specifically, in the past 4 games that Dak Prescott has played, he's had 2 or more touchdowns in every single game. Okay, in fantasy, that's fantastic. That's exactly what you want from your quarterback, especially in a 6-point per passing touchdown league. That's great. But on top of that, 3 touchdowns, right, from those past 4 weeks have been rushing touchdowns. So you're getting that 6 points, whether you play in a 4-point league or not. To be honest, the fact that Dak Prescott can use his legs and, unlock this offense to have an extra threat, that gives him that much more fantasy value. When you're able to at least option down on the goal line and keep the ball, pick up an extra score here or there throughout the game, it makes you that much more deadly. With the addition to Amari Cooper, we've seen Dak Prescott open up this offense more, them being able to have some sort of comfort level in the passing game so that they don't have to completely depend on Ezekiel Elliott to 100% of the time carry this team. And that's even opened up Zeke in the passing game themselves. They hit him up with 6 catches past week for 36 yards. So they're opening up the offense without a doubt in my mind. This coming week, Dak Prescott, he's got one of the most advantageous matchups you could possibly find out there. If you're not playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and if you're, you're thinking, okay, I'm not playing Tampa Bay, I'm not going to get the best matchup. But the Atlanta Falcons, they've proven that they give up a lot of points. This past week, week 10 of the fantasy football season, my hidden gem for the Space Zone was Baker Mayfield. He played against the Atlanta Falcons, and he looked like a Pro Bowler at some point. Having 3 touchdowns, Baker Mayfield, a rookie, when you have a quarterback like that with very little experience under a new offensive coordinator, and you can come out and dice up a defense, just imagine what Dak Prescott's going to be capable of doing this week. As I've mentioned all week long, the Atlanta Falcons, they give up the 4th most points to the quarterback position, the 3rd most points to the wide receiver and running back position on a weekly basis. They're giving up a ton of fantasy points on a weekly basis, and I think Dak Prescott this week has a great matchup. Yes, they play in Atlanta, which many of you may see as a disadvantage, but to be honest, as long as we're staying out of the weather pretty much, if we're playing in a dome stadium, all is well. Because now that we've gotten into November and we're about to get into December, the weather reports are going to be more and more vital. Whether there's wind, snow, rain, that is going to be a big factor going forward. So as of right now, they're playing in the Dome Stadium. Should be a good game. They're playing against a very bad defense, and I think Dak Prescott's going to find a lot of success. That's why he is my Space Stone for this week. He's going to be throwing the ball a lot, and he's going to be scoring you some fantasy points. All right, let's move on to the next hidden gem for this coming week. It is the Reality Stone, and the reality of the situation, ladies and gentlemen, is that Cooper Kupp, unfortunately, this past week tore his ACL. He is out for the rest of the season. Now, on my waiver wire video on Monday, I mentioned to many of you, Josh Reynolds should be available in your league. When we saw Cooper Kupp go out with an injury earlier on in the season with his MCL sprain, we saw that Josh Reynolds was the next guy to step up and be a part of this offense to the extent to where they 100% trusted him and gave him majority of the snaps. He played a high, snap count because of the fact that the Rams use the most 3 wide receiver sets than just about anybody in the NFL, right? The Rams, unlike a lot of teams, they have 3 stable wide receivers, Cooks, Woods, and Kupp, that they were able to use consistently. They all can block. They can all contribute throughout the game, and that's where they're at. They're not going to, because of Cooper Kupp's injury, change their offense. That is not going to happen. They have found success this season. That's why their record is what it is. And Josh Reynolds, we've seen him have a little bit of experience within this team. He's going to come in. He's going to gel, right? He's not going to be as good as Cooper Kupp by all means, but the reality of the situation is rest of the season, Josh Reynolds is that wide receiver for this team. He is going to be given the opportunity. He is going to have the targets. He is going to have to make some plays. We've seen him do it before earlier on this season where he had 2 receiving touchdowns in a single game. So I have confidence in Josh Reynolds. To what extent? I think, again, for this coming week, he's a guy that you can pick up off of your waivers, throw him in your flex position because, to be honest, the matchup is juicy. They play against the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. The over-under sitting at around 64 points. By all means, everyone believes this is going to be a shootout, and I'm sure the teams believe that as well. So if, in fact, that happens and we end up with a 35-34, 35-31 game, we're not going to be surprised because both of these offenses are high-powered. They are going to be coming out, trying to score as much as they possibly can. I have a lot of confidence in Josh Reynolds this week. And going forward, he's a guy that you can pick up, and if he continues to gel with this team, become a vital part of this offense like Cooper Kupp was, we can see some good fantasy value out of him. Wide receiver 3 capabilities and potential. So for those of you looking for a guy to put into your roster as of this week, because of the bye weeks or injuries, you're looking thin, Josh Reynolds is a good option. That is why he is my reality stone for this coming week of the fantasy football season. So let's go ahead and move on to the next guy I wanted to mention, which is the Soul Stone. Now, here's the thing. We have Sterling Shepard as the Soul Stone for this coming week. Now, you may be thinking, Sterling Shepard, Andrew, you sure? Yes. But here's the overlying theme within this, underlying theme. Sterling Shepard should be talked about more. He is a good receiver. But the fact of the matter is, we don't talk about Sterling Shepard as much because Eli Manning isn't playing good football. He has been decent as of the last couple weeks. Statistically, at least, he's been decent. But we don't see the potential of Sterling Shepard because he's not being given, the right amount of opportunity within this offense. If you put another quarterback on the Giants, let's say, for example, okay, let's think of if you put Carson Wentz on the Giants, just imagine. Let's just put it like that. Okay, Sterling Shepard would be a guy that we would be talking about as a wide receiver 2 every single week. That would be the fact. But because of the fact that Eli Manning is the quarterback of this offense, and they struggle at times to move the ball downfield, and sometimes, just like this past week, he didn't have that many targets. Yes, that is a given. But if we had a better quarterback there, all would be well. So here's the thing. The Soul Stone for this week, it is still Sterling Shepard. He plays against the worst, if not the worst, the second worst defense in the NFL. The second worst defense against the wide receiver position. They play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I say it all the time. If you've got players against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you have to play them, right? Because it is just a juicy matchup. They play in the Meadowlands Stadium this coming week in New Jersey. And the fact of the matter is, Sterling Shepard hasn't been terrible this season. He's just, he hasn't gotten the opportunity to the extent of where we want him to be at, right? As of the last 6 weeks, he's gotten 7+ targets, okay, except for this past week in which he had only 3 targets, but caught a touchdown and saved his week, right? But every single week, he has 7 or more targets. If those targets can transition into something more than 60% of a catch rate, Sterling Shepard could be a good receiver. We saw him against the Atlanta Falcons on that Monday night game in which he caught 150+ receiving yards because Eli Manning was willing to go out of his comfort zone, throw the ball deep, and get the ball to Sterling Shepard and allow him to make plays. That's exactly where we need Sterling Shepard to be. We need him to be given the opportunity, and we need Eli to take a little bit of a risk, right? Against this poor secondary, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they should be completely torched this week. Eli Manning should come out and put up some good numbers, not to the point where you can have 100% confidence in starting him, but we've seen Eli Manning as of the last couple weeks, as I mentioned, against the Falcons, he threw for 399 passing yards that game. Then the week after against Washington, he threw for 311 passing yards. And then this past week against the San Francisco 49ers, he threw 3 touchdown passes, only had 188 passing yards. But then again, they were able to get the ball down the field. They were able to cause turnovers defensively, and they found themselves in the end zone quite often and in the red zone quite often. This coming week, I have a lot of confidence in Sterling Shepard. And the fact of the matter is he's also playing in 95% of the offensive snaps for this team. They use a 2 wide receiver set majority of the time. And Sterling Shepard is always on the field. The only time he's ever off the field is when they come in for a 2-3 tight end set in which they want to really barrel the ball down the field. And or he steps out because he catches a 50-yard bomb. He's tired. He comes off, gets some water, bada boom, But otherwise, he is on the field just as much as Odell Beckham is. Obviously, Odell gets more targets, but Sterling Shepard this week is pulling the second best corner of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who really isn't much. I think he can have a good game for this coming week. this is the Soul Stone, correct? So who are we sacrificing? In fact, we're going to sacrifice Eli Manning this week. This is going to be Eli's last good week. I'm calling it right now. That is the sacrifice for Sterling Shepard. It's been quite the career, Eli. So just right off into the sunset, my dude. All right, we're moving on to the next hidden gem for this coming week. We're going to be talking about the Time Stone. All right, so let me preface this before we begin. I'm mentioning Lamar Jackson, not as a guy that you can grab and start this week, okay? But a guy that going on throughout the rest of the season, I think there is a good opportunity for Lamar Jackson to get some optimal playing time and actually contribute to this team as the starting quarterback of the Ravens. Now, this is my thought process behind this, okay? He is the time stone because it's finally time for Lamar Jackson to get some reps. Of the first round if the first round quarterbacks drafted in the 2018 NFL draft, he is the only one not to be given the starting job yet. You know, we've seen Josh Allen be the starter of his team and win games. So why not Lamar Jackson? With the injury that has taken place to Joe Flacco, he's dealing with a hip injury. We've seen him at practice on crutches, okay? That is not a good sign. By all means, that is not a good sign at all. So from what we've seen with Joe Flacco's injury, we know Robert Griffin and Lamar Jackson are the two other quarterbacks on this roster, okay? Robert Griffin is not going to last. He'll come out, he'll throw interceptions, and he'll eventually be replaced. So Lamar Jackson may not be playing this coming week, okay? But future and going on for the rest of the season, I see Lamar Jackson as a guy that you can pick up in a deeper league, throw him onto your bench, and hope, because what I've been hearing around the NFL is that Joe Flacco is pretty much done with the organization. John Harbaugh is pretty much done with the organization, and they're pretty much going to clean house next season. And even the whispers that were going around were, up top was telling John Harbaugh, you have to play Lamar Jackson. And he was saying, well, I'm still trying to win games. I can still make the playoffs. And they were basically telling him, well, this is what we want. If you can't get it done, we'll find another coach. And he said, that's fine. Next season, I don't have to stick around. That is fine. But don't tell me how to coach, kind of thing, right? As of right now, I think they're going to have to eventually turn to Lamar Jackson. I think Joe Flacco is pretty much done with this team. And going on forward in the next couple weeks, especially getting into your fantasy playoffs, I think Lamar Jackson could be a guy that makes a lot of plays with his legs, right? We've seen him be successful running the ball, running an option scheme in which he can find a lot of fantasy points. I mean, yes, he could. He's prone. He's a rookie. He's prone to throwing interceptions. We understand that. But he has the capabilities of using his legs, finding some points, and he's still got an arm. We've seen him win the Heisman for a reason. He's got an arm. If they can formulate the offense around him, he can find some good success. And going on forward throughout the rest of the season, I like him as my time stone. Do not play him this week, guys. By all means, this is the warning. Do not play him this week. Yes, this is the time stone for week 11, but this is a precursor for the rest of the season and how it's going to turn out. So that is the time stone. We're going to move on to the last guy I wanted to mention. All right, so it is the Mind Stone. And by all means, this was a tough one because, yes, you know that with the Mind Stone, I'm cursed with knowledge, and I know things that some of you may perhaps not believe to be true. But this week, it is Payton Barber of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay, so here's the situation. Okay, I've been cursed with this knowledge, and now that I've acquired this, I can see clearly, and I can tell you that Payton Barber is a good option this coming week for fantasy football. Now you may be thinking, exactly, Andrew, you've talked about Payton Barber to an extent, and nothing has been good about it, right? You've always been against Payton Barber from day one. Now, I understand that, but as of right now, I've seen the way. I see how it's going to be played out. This coming week, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they play against the New York Giants. Now, what about the New York Giants tells me that Payton Barber can have a good game? Well, a couple weeks back before the trade deadline, they traded away Damon Harrison, Snacks Harrison, to the Detroit Lions. Since doing that, one of two things basically happened. Number one, the Giants' defensive line completely just crumbled, and they can't stop the run. And the Lions have managed to figure out how to stop the run. Okay? So Obviously, Damon Harrison is a guy that is contributing, and he's one of the best, if not the best, nose/one shades in the NFL. Nose tackles and one shades in the NFL. So as of right now, with the Giants missing their big nose guard, up the middle has been quite the successful thing for teams. Specifically, the last 2 games the New York Giants have played, this past week, they played against the 49ers, in which Matt Breida had over 100 rushing yards. I think it was 101 rushing yards, which was his best game on the season by far. Whether it was in the run game or in the passing game, the dude found the end zone once, and I think maybe even twice. I think he found the end zone twice. And he had the best game of his season, right? He looked like a breakout performance for Matt Breida against the New York Giants defense that could not stop him for their life. Then 2 weeks prior, so there was the Washington game, then they had a bye week, then they had the 49ers game. So in the Washington game, Adrian Peterson looked like a young man running for 149 rushing yards that week. I mean, by all means, the New York Giants can't stop the run. They've given up their best piece when it comes to stopping the run up front. And I think Payton Barber is going to have the opportunity and the touches to be successful this week. He usually gets around 13 plus touches a week. And for those of you who are looking for guys that at least get touches and get yards with some sort of touchdown upside, I think Payton Barber is the guy. We've seen Jacquizz Rodgers be used in this offense, but that's only when they're trying to heavily pass the ball. I think this week there's going to be an opportunity for them to just run the ball, not have to force Fitzmagic to throw interceptions when you can just successfully run the ball downfield and get into the end zone. I like Payton Barber this week. I think he can find some success, especially because of the matchup being so juicy. I think the New York Giants are they're giving up the 10th most points to the running back position, but as of late, they're just off the last 2 games they're playing, they've given up, I think, top 3 in points to the running back position. It's like top 5. They're behind the Chiefs still, and they're behind the Atlanta Falcons either way. So as of right now, Payton Barber, he is my Mind Stone for this week. And those are the hidden gems for Week 11 of the fantasy football season. I hope you guys enjoyed. For those of you who haven't, please go down, click that subscribe button, click that like button. If you have any questions, it is Saturday. I will be answering all the questions in my comment section as soon as I possibly can. It is going to take me some time, guys. There's a lot of comments down there. Expected to take, I've actually sat here before and answered questions for upwards of 5 hours before, 5-6 hours. So expect something like that. I don't know. It's probably not as many questions because we're getting on later on in the season. We kind of have an idea on who to play. But as of right now, I will go answer those questions. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, this is the Fantasy Gauntlet. I am Andrew Kirchhoff, and hopefully these hidden gems blow up this week. All right. See you guys.